Shalom and welcome to People on the Path. My name is Adam Lowy, and I am the lifelong learning Moreh Derech at Congregation Beth Shalom in San Francisco. Each month, I will welcome dynamic guests to discuss, learn, and consider what it means to be on the path. How does an individual's choices impact their path? How do the various communities that an individual participates in change their lives forever? What unsuspecting moments became the powerful ones that inform personal and professional journeys? Where does one's relationship to their Jewish identity take surprising turns, and how does it spiritually manifest? I intend for the conversation to be intimate, unscripted, and informal. The possibilities and potential will be infinite. The directions, ways, and paths will be explored, discovered, and open. Let us please take a walk together on this month's People on the Path. It has become a tradition, as regulars know, for me to check in with our senior rabbi, Rabbi Dan Ain, before I welcome our guests. Rabbi Ain, thank you as always for joining me on the path. This is definitely a highlight of ours that we look forward to each month. It is another gorgeous day in San Francisco. I'm looking out the window. How are you? And to take the command of Rufus and Shaka Khan, tell me something good.
Well, something good is I came about that close to my first birdie in the history of my life yesterday with you on our day off, which we're blessed to have together at Lincoln Park.
Yep.
And I mean, I thought it was going in. It was this close to being my first ever. It was perfect off the tee. I think it was the 9th hole, 10th hole. Perfect off the tee, perfect approach, and then that close. That was really beautiful. The weather's gorgeous, obviously. Thank you. You're keeping me active and leading my path here, like you are doing for so many of us in the congregation, which is great. So that is good, and I think that juxtaposed to, some of the difficulties that we have in our city and the wanting to share some of the blessings that we have. I think 2 years into a pandemic, your guest that you're going to have today is a person who I think a lot of people in this town look towards as someone who's dedicated their lives, his life, to really trying to tackle some of the deepest problems that we have here in our neighborhood and in our city, and especially when it's a beautiful day and we're healthy, thank God, and okay, like we feel blessed and wanting to give back and to serve, but it's hard to know how. And so I think the guest that you have today is just really needed and special and appropriate. So thank you for bringing him to this community.
It was my pleasure, and thank you for giving me the space to do this program, for being the one who I threw the idea by long ago in your backyard, and you were all for it. And we've had such great people, and I'm super excited that you almost had a birdie yesterday, and I know there will be one soon. So it was close.
I thought it was going in. So did everybody else. You guys thought it was going in.
It was literally an inch. It stopped an inch from the cup, and if there was a breeze, it would have gone in. So I would love to welcome our guest today, Rabbi Michael Lezak. If you have not turned on your camera, please do so. Rabbi Lizek is the rabbi at Glide in San Francisco, a radically inclusive, just, and loving community mobilized to alleviate suffering and break the cycles of poverty and marginalization. He works in Glide's Center for Social Justice, aiming to magnify the impact of Glide's justice machinery and to forge covenantal bonds between Glide and the broader Jewish community. He spearheads groundbreaking work with law enforcement and district attorneys from around the country to help them understand the challenges faced by people living in extreme poverty. In his previous position as rabbi of Congregation Rodef Shalom, he founded programs to help families and inmates at Pelican Bay State, San Quentin, and Vacaville prisons. Rabbi Lizek is on the National Board of Truah, the Rabbinical Call for Human Rights, and he is married to Rabbi Noah Kushner and is the proud father of 3 daughters. Rabbi Lezak, welcome to People on the Path.
Thanks so much for having me. Great to see your face. Looking forward to a lively conversation and getting to know you and sharing some stories together.
Thanks for joining me. I'm also really looking forward to this conversation, getting to know more about you. I'm going to give you the same beginner that I threw at Rabbi Ain. How are you? And can you tell me something good?
Yeah, I love you. On my immediate circle, deep blessing. My people are healthy. My kids are learning in good ways and growing, and thank God have in-person school, which is a blessing of life. And work is hugely meaningful in it. And I have a dear friend who's not well on the East Coast, so I'm just like holding her tightly in my prayers for strength and a refuah shlema. Tell you something good. I went to go see Bjork a few nights ago, and I saw her back in the day with the Sugar Cubes a couple times. The band in the, I guess, probably early '90s. And I don't have the words to describe the show. I remember reading the review of this cornucopia show in the Times a couple years ago. I'm like, if that ever comes our way, I should go. My old friend from camp flew up from LA. We met with another friend who's from camp who's a member at the kitchen, and the 3 of us went and had an extraordinary night. So amazing.
Oh, wow,
Yeah.
Where was it?
It was at the Chase Center, and her style is exquisite, and the stage. You should just go. I'll say this to you. She's playing one more night tonight. There's tickets available. Even I knew none of the music. I kid you not. You should go. You should go.
Wow.
You could get in the room for $50. I would go. It'll change you.
I've seen her a couple. I have seen her a couple times. She's awesome. She's mind blower.
Indeed.
Awesome. That's so beautiful. Thank you for sharing something good. You had a whole list before you actually got to your something good, that you said many good things.
Yes. Try to catalog the good. Try to hold it and feel it.
And I'm sending prayers also to your friend on the East Coast for healing and wellness.
Thank you.
So, Rabbi Lizek, I typically kind of want to go back into figuring out a little bit about how did you become this person that is doing the work that you're doing now. But before I go there, I really just want to hear from you. Like I feel most of us can relate to the experience that we're having throughout the pandemic, and particularly this last 6 months, I would say, when people thought that we were kind of getting towards this light at the end of the tunnel, and then we quickly took major steps backwards. And I feel like, as people with homes and food and jobs and comforts, we have our struggles, but you're working with people that are experiencing way different types of struggles. And if I'm going to just say that comparatively, that my struggles shouldn't be called struggles, I think, in some way, compared to the people that you're working with and trying to bring light to. So can you just tell us a little bit, what goes on in a day-to-day for you at work, and tell us about the people that you are have been working with in Glide and how they're doing at this stage of the pandemic. To quickly take it probably from something good.
Yeah. Well, I want to start with the blessing. I remember when I was interviewing for the job at Glide 5+ years ago, and I said something from my naive, suburban, white, Jewish self to the then executive director, Rita Shimon. I said, well, I'm hoping to bring light and hope and blessing and healing to the Tenderloin, and in a bit of my white savior mode. And she looked at me and she said, what makes you think that there's not light and hope and blessing right now? And I can say that just rocked me into a sense of humility. And I can say that there are deep challenges in that neighborhood, as there are deep challenges in all parts of town. And there is blessing and resilience and wisdom and street smarts and gutter smarts that I don't possess. I wonder what it's like to navigate between not just two San Franciscos, but two Americas regularly.
Hmm.
Of, think of the city of like a predominantly Caucasian, predominantly wealthy neighborhood that I live in, to the Tenderloin that is predominantly brown and black, or it's not predominant, much more so than the rest of town, and a lot of poverty and a lot of pain. Del Seymour, who's the unofficial mayor of the Tenderloin, who some of your congregants have taken a walking tour with Del, who's one of my many great Tenderloin teachers, said, look, folks in Pacific Heights are doing just as much drugs as they are on the streets here in the Tenderloin. You're just doing them behind closed doors, right? And he would say things like, you're now walking through people's living rooms here. Make sure to give them a greeting of hello and the dignity of looking them in the eye. Look, it is, someone talked about like soul metabolism of being able to go in and do the hard work and come back out. For some reason, the Holy One wired me with the capacity to go in and to come out. All the books I read are about dark, challenging subjects in American history and Israeli history and modern day. And I want to think about that. And I want to think about the power that I have, that we have, and how we might, in this time of unprecedented strength and power and wealth in the Jewish community, how might we dream up a prophetic future for our town and our country and use every ounce of our being and more tzedakah dollars than we think we're capable of giving to be agents of tikkun, to be agents of hope, and to then also on top of that to go humbly into the Tenderloin and to see human beings who aren't just desperate, but have the Tzelem of Elohim burning bright. Many of them, many of them with trauma that you and I can't even begin to imagine, right? So maybe I'll pause there.
Well, I appreciate you flipping my use of the term light, and schooling me on that a little bit. I actually, as it came out, I knew you were going to.
That's okay.
Just based on the conversation that we've had before. But I so welcome that, and I think it's important for me to hear over and over again. If I come to the assumption that for some reason the radiance that I'm surrounded by is more glowing than someone who might live on the street.
Can I build for 1 second? Is that all right?
Please.
So my coworker, who many or some of your congregants have met, Isoke Femi, who's a 71-year-old not Jewish Black woman, whose title at Glide before I got there is the Maven for Transformative Learning. One of the best educators I've ever met, and she's my soul sister and work wife, and we really love each other and have like a sibling relationship with one another. She has a practice of walking down the street and offering silent blessings to people, channeling love to people, and I've seen it in action, and I've actually trying to take it upon myself of blessing people. When I, like many of people who are listening to this, I too am addicted to my phone. My wife has a phone. Her phone case literally says "I Pharaoh" on it, as the phone owns us like Pharaoh used to own us. But I have a practice of when I'm within 5 blocks of Glide, I make sure my phone is away. And I try to keep my eyes and my soul open. And I wonder what it would be like to, and again, this is spoken as a white man who knows the neighborhood, and society has given me as a man and with white skin a lot more power and privilege. But what might it be like? It doesn't cost you a penny to be like a walking mezuzah, sanctifying space and souls. It might take you to, I don't want anyone to be uncomfortable. I mean, unsafe, ever, but to be uncomfortable enough to grow your soul, I think can be a way to transform your pathway through the city and through your week.
I love the practice, and easier said than done, I'm sure. Even just to put the phone away. But I would definitely say it's interfering with our ability to connect to many people.
Amen.
And I just want to say, I love that you mentioned Del Seymour. My daughter just had her tour of the Tenderloin as part of the 7th grade Brandeis Tzedek project, and she was moved, and and I asked her what her guide's name was, and she said, I don't remember the name of my guide, but we were in two groups, but Del Seymour was the guide of the other group. Like
Yeah.
she even in just somehow
Yeah,
the
no,
proximity to Del, that she felt his
he's
his
a
energy.
great light. I'm teaching all the 7th graders at Brandeis tomorrow, kind of follow. Usually they would come in person to Glide. If it were not Omicron now, I would have them for multiple days throughout the year. But God willing, well, we will be able to say a Lahitra oats to COVID and to its home.
Amen.
Yeah.
Amen. Well, I will tell my daughter too that she's in for a good conversation
Looking
tomorrow.
forward to it. Tell her to bring a good question.
All right. So thank you for giving us like the live now. This is how this is how you approach. This is really the state of the people that you are working with on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So now let's go backwards. Let's figure out. Okay, so you said I wish I can remember. Let's see if I can pull exactly what you said, that you were given some sort of ability to step into it and to step out of it. So how how did Judaism, spirituality exist in your home growing up?
My parents are first generation born. I knew 3 of my 4 grandparents who kind of fled crazy stuff in Eastern Europe. We lit Shabbos candles. We were connected to a shul, but 11 months out of the year, religious/spiritual life didn't mean much to me. The month I'd spent at Camp Pass Kramer every summer brought me alive and fed me in ways that Jewish summer camp feeds a lot of kids. That being said, my parents ritualized justice in our house. In 1980, my brother and I came home from school, and they said, there's a man from Iran who's going to move into the bedroom across the hall from you next week, and he lived with us for a year, Mandripur Yamudini, who we called Henry, and my parent, he was fleeing the revolution after the Shah was kicked out. A few years later, my parents helped resettle hundreds of Russian Jewish immigrants/refugees, helped them get apartments and houses and jobs and get them into school. So my parents modeled for me that with whatever power you have or an extra bedroom, you should be giving. It was like redemption, individual redemption is possible, like with the power that you have. And they did that work connected to their synagogue, and the synagogue enabled that growing up. And we never identified like we're doing this because we are Jews. They just did it. And it was a potent force that I think clearly shaped who I am. And maybe the other story I will tell is the summers when I was 14 and 15, they sent me to live in Chicago with cousins in a white Jewish suburb north of the city to work at a meat market that my Russian Jewish refugee grandfather opened on the South Side in the 30s. So I was living in white Jewish suburb, probably in $1 million house, literally with a white picket fence. And I bought Prince's Purple Rain album that summer, and we went water skiing. But I was working on the South Side of Chicago at 71st and Stony Island, where I'm hanging out with Black people for the first time in my life and seeing human beings, and we're talking sports and Prince and life. But there was insane poverty, and something I think in my teenage brain was like, what, 2 Americas, what's the deal here? I didn't get it. It was around the corner from the Nation of Islam's world headquarters. I saw food stamps for the first time in my life. And I think in many ways I'm at Glide today because of the way they shaped my soul through those immersive experiences that they created for us.
So Hess Kramer, this is LA, right?
Yes. I'm a Valley boy through and through.
And so when your parents, are basically, offering this man a room in your home.
Yeah.
When they're making basically avenues of entry for Russian immigrants.
Yeah.
Was that at all connected to their professions, or was that merely?
No. My dad was a aerospace engineer at that time, for a lot of that time, left that ultimately. My mom was a paraprofessional psychologist and ran support groups at the synagogue. So they were not, refugee workers or anything like that. They just, I imagine, the way I see it today, 40 years later, they saw in Mondri's story and in these Russian Jewish stories more particularly, their parents' stories, right? Their parents who fled crazy anti-Semitism, Mondri fleeing, anti-Semitism and not feeling safe. The Russians fleeing the Soviet Union, craving some freedom, spiritual and religious freedom. And they're like, they felt an internal obligation. They wouldn't call it a commandment, but my dad's like, if he gave us one command, it was like, don't ever forget where you come from. Right. And part two of that was never stated is like, you got power now, how are you going to use your power?
You would claim your parents were aware of that power? Like, I feel like our parents' generation are clueless about that power. They just, maybe that's the Detroit suburb parents that I have, but
yeah. Look, my synagogue education growing up was all Shoah education. You should be Jewish because they tried to kill us, right? That didn't make me want to be Jewish. In fact, that probably turned me into a little bit of a self-hating Jew. I had to go through a lot of Jewish therapy in my 20s. I was kind of closeted until my early 20s, Jewishly. I didn't do Jewish at all in college. But until I went to Brandeis Bardeen to BCI, and in the first week, the director, Rabbi Alvin Mars, was like, I think you should be a rabbi. And I'm like, you're crazy, man, because I don't know any cool rabbis and no reference point. So I thought I had to give up to Michael Lezak. I like to become the rabbi on the pulpit, right? So it took some good therapy and Jewish therapy and claiming new mentors, Jews who were doing fierce justice work and building fiercely righteous communities. Like that, then I'm like, oh, I could be like him or her or them, right? So that just showed me possibility.
One of my questions that I often ask is tell us about some of these teachers. Who are a couple of these mentors? These cool rabbis that.
So summer of '92, I'm at Brandeis Bardeen with Rabbi Richard Levy, may his memory be a blessing. Rabbi Carol Levy, his wife. I'll tell you a story about her in a minute. Rabbi Levi Lauer, who was teaching at Pardes. Danny Gordis, who's the head of Pardes now. His name is escaping. Danny Landis. They were all my teachers that summer. Label Fine, right? So like luminaries of the 90s, Gedolei Hador. Carol Levy sat us down and she's like, gave us a lecture on righteous giving. And she's like, imagine your checkbook as an ethical document. You die tomorrow, Lisac, and they find your checkbook or your visa statement. What does it say about how you lived your life? Right? She said, you should give. I'm like, Carol, I have $20 in my name. She said, so write a check for $1 to help buy your favorite organization some staples or stamps. Right? So she's like, you got to give till it hurts. She is my most important tzedakah teacher. Rabbi Karen Bender, who was at Temple Judea in Tarzana, now works at the Jewish Home, who helped bury my father 18 years ago. It was soon after the Gulf War, talked about being in a sealed room in Jerusalem, right? And what it meant to imagine that the Jews might be gassed again. I met Israelis that summer who helped me fall in love with Israel and Israelis. Alvin Mars opened the pathway for me. Danny Gordis, helped me think seriously about a Shabbat practice. So that was pivotal, and I've claimed not 1 million, but 1,000 more since then.
Love it. I love hearing all the names. Some I'm familiar with, and I wish I had met them. I will meet them.
Yeah, I can point you to books if you need.
Yes, you are. You have sent me a large list of books, and I'm excited to dig into them. I want to go back to the that summer experience in Chicago.
Yeah.
Because I grew up in Detroit. I'm sure I had friends who were simultaneously running alongside you in whatever suburb that was in
Deerfield.
Deerfield, yes, yes. So I had many friends in the Skokie, Evanston, Wilmette, that whole area. And so what did you like? What did you take back with you from those experiences, particularly in the South Side? Talking with Black people for the first time, beginning to build relationships with people that were not like you in the same way. So when you got back to LA in the Valley, did things start to shift for you socially? Were you starting to search out alternate communities? How do you think that kind of manifested through the rest of your high school? And then you said then you got to college and you were definitely not You were not doing a Jewish life at that point.
Yeah.
How were you manifesting kind of that social justice piece at
Yeah.
that point? And were you trying to get your peers, even in
Yeah.
high school, to kind of join you in this uh,
Yeah.
in
I
this
mean,
adventure?
I think it was probably subterranean, the seeds that were planted that emerged at different points when I got back. Um, I mean, I think the core teaching was that like people are people, and I think to grow up in the stew of American racism is to think of the other as like somehow different than me. And so I think there was just like I had I stayed in the valley, I think I would have othered people of color more than I did because of those experiences. I don't, I think to this day I'm like, everyone's got their fire, everyone's, passion, and they're human beings. And like what is true about one Jew is not the same true about another Jew, and the same as about a black Jew, white Jew. Like the full spectrum of humanity is represented in a particular subgroup of human beings. So there's that. I think I started to make sense of my Chicago experience in university. I had a Black Studies professor who forever changed me, Dr. Manning Marable. He wrote a biography of Malcolm X that was published about 10 days before he died. He wrote me a letter of recommendation for rabbinical school. And he just taught me about the civil rights movement. We watched the series Eyes on the Prize. He helped me critically look at American history and systemic racism in a way that I didn't understand and my high school did not give me. He pushed me to think about like tax structures. He was a socialist. I went to go live in Copenhagen, Denmark, as an undergrad student because I wanted to live in a social democracy. My Danish family paid 60-70% taxes, right? My Danish sister and I would argue late into the night. She's still a dear friend of mine to this day. Not Jewish, for if that matters. And I was still not out Jewishly. They took me to meet Jews there. I was like, oh, okay. But I think Scandinavia is a modern day promised land in some ways, in this thinking of collective communal responsibility.
Mm.
I have 2 kids in private high school and 1 kid in a private university. You can imagine the price tag of that. And thank God for parents and scholarship and all that. My Danish sister got paid to go to university, right? She received a check to supplement her rent, right? There was no tuition. Her entire family, right? So I just came out with like, what are idealistic ways to walk through the world? What places have done it better than we have? How might we claim that and replicate it? So Dr. Marable in Denmark helped me kind of make sense of the past and imagine a more liberated and generous and righteous future.
Where was Dr. Marable? What
I went to school at the University of Colorado Boulder. He was there with me and then moved on soon after I left. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, I was a marketing and international business student who didn't care so much about that. I cared a lot about Black studies. So, yeah.
So how did you end up in '92 at Brandeis Bardeen Institute? When did you start to get out of the closet, as you say?
I was not out of the closet before I got there. I graduated with this marketing and international business degree, a fire for Black studies, had no clue how I was going to make $1 ever, right? I took the LSAT because maybe I could be like a civil rights or environmental attorney. I was temping. I had my temp job. I had an 800 number where my friends could call me for free. I was like, Mom, I found my career. I'm like, I thought I was in heaven, right? I was like 21. So I loved summer camp. Vicky Kupitz, Rabbi Jonathan Kupitz's mother, knew my connection to Hess Kramer. She's like, why don't you go to this BCI place this summer? I was like, ooh, I could go back to camp and I don't have to temp job. And I walked into camp and like we had 80 Jews from around the world with these luminous teachers, and we made Shabbos and we worked the land. BCI is based on, I kid you not, kibbutzim and Danish folk school. So like, Israel and Denmark were coming together. And Rabbi Mars, who took me on a walk after the first Shabbos on the high road, and he looked at me and he's like, I think you'd be a great rabbi. And I was like, I mean, internally, I'm like, you are insane, right? Because I couldn't see it. I couldn't see the potential. I was too self-hating, too limited in my Jewish perspective, too close. years, right, to awesome Jews around LA. And I was building out Shabbos communities. And my BCI alum, we were meeting together, and I started working at the Wiesenthal Center, the Museum of Tolerance, and I would say it was like building Shabbat dinners with like-minded folks, and kind of inching my way out of the Jewish closet and going to Israel for my first time as a curious Zionist, and reading great books. And I was like, I just felt myself coming alive, and in that zone, thought seriously about med school and seriously about a psychology program, and returned to BCI the following summer as an advisor. And he's like, are you going to be a rabbi? I'm like, I think I'm going to be a psychologist. He's like, be a great psychologist. And I took the GRE and never applied to a psych program, and was about 52% sure I wanted to be a rabbi when I left for Jerusalem in '94. So
I know the Brandeis Bardeen Institute. I had my wedding there.
Holy ground.
It was a holy weekend. We spent the whole weekend.
We had our Tanaim there, so I know it well.
What's BCI though? Can you tell people who are listening what's BCI stand for?
Brandeis Collegiate Institute was founded by Shlomo Bardeen, an amazing educator, and partnered with Louis Brandeis, the Supreme Court Justice. My gut says 80 plus years ago. They used to do 2 separate 26-day programs every summer for Jews ages 18 to 26. That might have changed a little, to unpack their Jewish identity, to build out a holy community, to rise up and to have a bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah within 3 weeks if you haven't had one, to folk dance, to share meals, to wash dishes, and to be a camper as a 23-year-old. And it was thrilling and amazing. And I would say Noah and I, to this day, when we imagine the communities we want to build, I would say the kitchen, Kitchen's Freedom School, the work I do at Glide, that partnership there, and what I did as a congregational rabbi, we often reference, like, BCI was so successful, so immersive. Like, how does that apply to life outside? How might we recreate the magic that happened there? The hit rate of like lighting people up Jewishly was insane, right? So we're not immersive, but a lot of the work I do at Glide is referencing, Hess Kramer and BCI and other work. So.
Amen to that. I'm with you on the immersive experience, and that's certainly what Rabbi Ain and I have been trying to do at our traditional conservative synagogue, and trying to kind of flip the notion of what that can mean today in 2022. So I'm excited that we've met, and we'll continue to figure out ways to learn and be together and do this holy work. I want to understand what happened in 1994 when you got to Israel as a man who had some pretty clear notions of justice and fairness and equality, and I think probably at this point the rosy lens of whatever may have been given to you in your Jewish education as a kid about Israel, was probably not so rosy even stepping into Israel. I was there also in the same exact time, 92, 93, I was there. And that was a powerful year for me, really shifted my perspective of Israel that year. Tell me about your experience in Israel, and again, if you can add on to that a bit, what kind of justice work are you a part of in Israel now, if at all?
So back then, I had not thought much about Israel or Palestinians much. I had built relations. I had a great aunt and uncle who I visited every Friday. I would take the bus from Jerusalem to Tel Aviv, who arrived in Palestine in the 1920s from Poland. That's a whole other story for another time, but they, cooked me a 90-course meal every Friday from scratch, and taught me my Hebrew that I own today. On the justice end, there was clear work we did at HUC. The most meaningful work I did, I visited an Ethiopian Jewish family once a week, and taught them English, and they taught me some Hebrew and Amharic, and just imagined what it would like that tens of thousands of Jews from Africa had just landed in the years before, and what it meant to think of two Jerusalems, like they were living in in a not quite a tent camp, like in caravans, like on the south side of Jerusalem, and to help lift them up. I swam once a week all year with a man who had cerebral palsy. A friend, classmate, and I would pick him up in his apartment take him in a taxi to a public pool, help him get dressed, and his body that was tense, we could literally feel it like loosen in the water. Avi was his name. So that was so intimate and holy. I can't believe I got to do that. It was an auspicious time to be in the Holy Land. Ye, who had not thought much about the occupation, who had maybe read The Yellow Wind by David Grossman by then, I was there when I was standing in Jerusalem near HUC when King Hussein flew his plane over downtown Jerusalem, right? Which is a closed airspace. I was living with Daniel Sokach at the time, the founder of the New Israel Fund, and we're like, what? Who could that be? We learned later that like in this closed airspace, it was King Hussein because we had just signed a peace treaty with Jordan, and he wanted to see the city that he was beloved to him. 2 weeks later, I was in Jordan, right? Went to Petra, went to Amman, went to Har Nevo, to Mount Nebo, literally, right? So that was radical, and there was possibility and potential. Arafat came back from exile. We were making, Oslo was in full effect. We were making peace. I'm the Messiah here, like this is all happening here, right? It's all possibility and potential. I stayed through August of 95. I came back. I started dating Noah. We went on our first date the week after Rabin was assassinated, which was up until that time, the worst day in my life, right? I lived around the corner from Rabin's apartment, his house. He spoke Hebrew slowly enough that I could understand. I saw Bill Clinton be driven through downtown Jerusalem with 10,000 police officers to protect him, right? The kippah that Clinton wore to Yad Vashem, I had the woman who made him one, made one for me, right? So I had all these connections. And then he was assassinated, and like it threw us and that trajectory in Israeli history off to this day. You should read the book, The Killing of a King. I forget who wrote it, but about the assassination and up to and everything since. So to my work in Israel today, I'm on the board of Trua. I'm immensely proud of the work they do domestically and in Israel, Palestine. I went with them on a tour probably 3-4 summers ago to the South Hebron Hills, through Hebron, through passing luxurious settlements in Kiryat Arba to like squalor of Palestinians, shanty towns where Jewish settlers with kippot would go literally put rusty metal in these people's wells to poison their wells, right? So this is haunting to me. A living, I would say, Jewish nightmare, right? That I think has taken us so far off track. Rabbi Tamar Elad Applebaum, who was the rabbi at Zion in Jerusalem, who was a dear friend and our main rabbi in Jerusalem, said when I brought her to Moreh, she's like, the Jewish people have been blessed with a state. We will have actualized our promise when we help the Palestinians birth a state, right? So the last bit I'll say here is that Glide, we talk about trauma-informed care. You come to the front desk this morning because you've got a bruise on your eye. Someone hit you, right? Or your friend comes with a track mark on their arm. We want to think about the trauma you went through last night and the trauma you went through 30 years ago that got you to this day. And until we unpack that trauma and help you wrestle with it, then you can begin on a path of healing. All the best stories of transformation from Glide and the Tenderloin, the Teshuvah stories from the Tenderloin are stories of people who've unpacked their trauma. When Glide taught me this language of trauma-informed care, I ultimately, after 6 months, kind of turned it on me and our people. What is it like to think about trauma-informed Judaism? What trauma do you carry, right? What trauma, from 10 years ago? I carry trauma from my religious school education of like all Shoah, right? Not much Pesach, right? Not much justice. I carry epigenetic trauma from family who walk through craziness in Eastern Europe, or from Egypt, if we want to call it. I think our trauma haunts us and impedes us from our prophetic greatness, right? I think the tendency and the ease with which we run to worry about anti-Semitism, right? I don't want to be stupid. I don't want to yes, there's a resurgence, and yes, Trump lifted the rock, and there's a lot of crazy people, and yes, But for every dollar we spend thinking about, putting up a new fence, we should be spending 100 or 1,000 on building great new teachers like you and Rabbi Ain, who are imagining a great Jewish future. If fear owns us, then we've lost.
Michael, when did you realize that you were a leader?
I pivoted in the summers between 9th and 10th grade at Hess Kramer, where I was kind of, I swear to you, shy, introverted kid who was just thought of himself as kind of like dweeby dorky, to be like, that summer, I'm like, I came out. I'm like, somehow I found some mojo. I didn't feel like a leader much in college. And at BCI, I ultimately felt a bit like a leader, but when I went to rabbinical school, definitely did not feel that. I think I felt everyone else knew much more Torah than I was ever taught, and was far downfield and more evolved Jewishly. I had a great therapist once who said to me, she's like, Michael, I didn't feel like a great therapist until I was out for 10 years. And I could say that tracks about right with my rabbinate. I think something about me catching my groove after 10 years of making a ton of mistakes and flubbing a bunch and laughing and claiming mentors and pushing myself, that I felt like I caught my groove. And that, I think, from then on through all my, I guess, call it the remaining 8 years of being a congregational rabbi. But then I think it dialed down a bit at Glide because I was new turf and I didn't know. And, I came in not want to, look, I'm a wealthy white dude, right? I wanted to come in very humble. I didn't know squat about that neighborhood.
Yeah.
So,
well, I admire your humility.
Thank you.
And I think that's why a community like Glide embraces you.
Thank you.
And it's not easy to be a humble leader. So
Thank you.
Thank you. I know Rabbi Ain is itching, but I want to ask one more question before we bring Rabbi Ain to ask you some questions.
Please.
And this is one that you can think about for a minute if you need to.
Please.
One sentence that you would say to Jewish leadership of institutions and organizations right now. What would that sentence be?
Time to be boldly creative, to imagine futures, lively, vibrant futures that we can't even imagine, to pass leadership on to the next generation, to know when it's time maybe to step off the stage, to humbly take inventory of the power that we have, and to, with insane chutzpah, use that power, insane and humble chutzpah, use that power, maybe a little sense of humor in there too, to do the greatest tikkun work internally first, like work on your own neshama first and your own family first, and then think about your community, and then think about how that applies right here in your town. How might you build out a practice that helps you be a walking sanctuary, and let's transfer it to Israel Palestine. How might we be bold and courageous?
Amen.
Thank
Rabbi Ain, the floor is yours. My Rabbi Lezak has given us tons to think about and has moved me immensely. Go, Rabbi Ain. What do you want to ask him?
I only have two questions. I guess one is personal and one is global. So let's start with the personal. I'm from New York, spent a lot of time in Brooklyn. And, when I walk down the street, looking in someone's eyes, not necessarily the greatest move that you could do, right? You don't really want to go out of your way to start making eye contact with people. At least so I was taught and brought up. So I heard you talk about what can we do when we go down to the Tenderloin. You can look up and look into people's eyes. Okay, so now how do you manage risk? as an individual? How do you manage personal safety when we are compelled to treat everyone as human beings,
Yeah.
all people who live in our city as human beings?
Yeah.
How do you manage your own risk mitigate for your own safety and
Yeah.
like that?
Again, like I'll start like white dude, which connotes power for the three of us in the society in which we live and work. I'll come at it with a story and then unpack it. The Kitchen's religious school, the Freedom School, meets pre-COVID Metaglide once a month, and I would often have the kids would be doing work, and I would teach the parents sitting in the Glide parking lot. And I'd say the first thing I want you to do is take a lap around the block. I said, I would say I want you to never feel unsafe, but I don't mind you feeling uncomfortable. And I think a lot of us conflate our discomfort with lack of safety. And I never want anyone to feel unsafe. One mom came to me and said, "Don't feel safe. Will you walk with me?" I walked with her. She had a very powerful experience. She came to me a week later and said, "It's very meaningful to me. I'm an art teacher. I would like to think about how to use my art superpowers here at Glide." I shopped it around the building, and Toby Simon, to this day, I think there might have been an article in the J about her. I don't know. Like, to this day, every Thursday morning, sits outside of Glide with a table of art supplies, with Glide clients there. And these Glide clients who've had all kinds of trauma, right? Say, "I'm painting my PTSD." So I would say it's a practice. And I would say I would take a walk with anyone who wants to. And I don't think you have to come to the Tenderloin to do it. We all know where there's homeless people close to where we live. They're always at that intersection or in your doorway. And I've heard stories from Marilyn Heiss, hi Marilyn, about folks sleeping in the doorway of your shul, right? How might we bring our greatest sense of love and compassion to those spaces and show up with $1 or a granola bar or a, Target gift card in our wallet all the time? Rabbi Les Bronstein, who's our rabbi, walks, and Carol Levy, like, walk around with tzedakah slot in your wallet all the time. So I think some of it is realizing that we all like to feel safe. I mean, and we all like to feel comfortable. We should always feel safe. I had my 20-year-old daughter, all 4 years of high school, worked in Glide's harm reduction program, giving out clean needles to mainly Black men, she taught me, through all 4 years of high school. On her third week walking from high school to Glide, she called me and said, "I'm being catcalled 4 blocks away. I'm in the hotel lobby." On one level, like, total nightmare. I say, "I'm running to get you." I want her to have the instinct of how to navigate a world that is completely sexist, right? That's not changing on my clock. So, and I want her to be able to show up with confidence and strength in spaces like that. So I would, think with you all of how do we do that for adults? How do we do that for teens in bite-sized bits that ultimately elongate into a stable practice?
Thank you. That was a very thoughtful answer. I appreciate it. The global question, because this issue has come up a couple times in this conversation about whiteness and about race, and Whoopi Goldberg brought this up this past week around Jews and race and Holocaust and race. So I guess, what are we? Are we white? How do we understand the power? How do we understand, I guess, Whoopi's obviously a brilliant woman. What's going on that she thinks the Holocaust wasn't about race? How do we understand that? And what does that mean for who we are as Jews?
Yeah. I'd start with, what are we? Who are we? Like, we are human beings, right? Born to 2 Jewish parents, maybe 1, 2 Jewish parents. A lot of people have chosen a Jewish path. Some running with the Jews, but not yet, or maybe never going to be Jewish, right? Idealistically, prophetically, like a kingdom of priests, like light to the nations, light to whatever neighborhood you live in, walking radically generous through the world. What are we? We are a people who for millennia have been othered, who have been traumatized, who, even though I close to no physical trauma in my own life, carry the trauma of Eastern Europe in me, the neuroses, the insanity of like, why do I have a ton of water in the basement? Because God forbid the earthquake come. Like I'm just like, it's just like more so than someone who hasn't had the trauma. So I think we are a people destined for holiness. We are summoned to a path of righteousness and holiness. And how might that holiness play out in our every interaction? From like, what does that mezuzah mean on the door of your house? Right? What the way you talk to your partner or your kid, or the way you humbly make tshuva for saying the wrong thing, right? So to the Nazis' eyes, we were a race. In America's eyes, we know in your shul and mine, right? We got Jews of all stripes, right? So Whoopi knows a ton of white Jews. And the one she was referencing standing there was like her white Jewish brother or sister. Like my, they'd come after her first. Okay, like I think there's enough people worried about anti-Semitism out there that I maybe live in the luxury of not spending much time thinking about it. I want to think much more about the Torah I'm going to live and teach and pass to my kids, and do what I can to put down trauma and fear. You should watch Dr. Mark Dollinger on CNN with Don Lemon. You can find it on YouTube. He's a much more astute talker on Whoopi than I will ever be. And you should read his book on Black Power, Jewish politics. Black politics.
Back in the pre-COVID times, we're gonna have to come up with how to express the, right? BC.
Yeah.
No, I think
be a different.
BC might be
a different.
But we had Rabbi Lezak and we had Mark Dollinger come for two separate Bima dialogues.
He's one of the greats.
Very meaningful for our community, and we miss those Bima dialogues, and hopefully we can return to
Please
them.
God.
So thank you, and God bless you.
Right back at you. May you
all of the work that you are doing, and thank you for sharing your story with Adam.
We're really grateful to be with you all, and may blessings overflow in your house and in your community and in our city.
Thank you very much. Adam's not done with you though.
Amen. With love.
Rabbi Lizek, we've gotten to what I is typically a bit of a lighter part of the show.
Yeah.
I thank you immensely for going deep right away. You when we talked offline a couple weeks ago, you inspired me to do some shattering of the heart work.
Yeah.
And I hope that today's conversation will inspire others to consider the power that we have, and how we can use it to make the world a more just place.
Amen.
And I'm going to take you now into the speed round of questions. As I said, this is potentially a bit more light, and getting to know some of you right now. So answer as quickly as you can.
Yeah.
And are you ready?
Our game is on.
All right. What are the 5 necessities that you must have with you on the path?
A great meal, a fierce community, a holy book, crazy good music that feeds your soul, and a memory of from where you came.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to go right down with the music. All right, so music is clearly a big part of who you are.
Amen.
This is going to be a tough one. If you could take one album with you on the path.
Oh, yeah.
One album. Okay, and I'll give you when the reaction comes when I say one, I'll give you the 90-minute tape. So you got 45-minute, 2 sides, 2 albums.
Yeah. For the holy journey, I would take U2's Joshua Tree and Hillel Tigay's and Ikar's first CD, which was called When We Left for Our Journey We Didn't Know.
Awesome. Thank you. I don't know that one. I need to fight. I'm going to have to look at that one.
Yeah.
I remember when Joshua Tree came out really well.
Amen.
I can still smell the weight room of my high school
Amen.
when that was being played. All right. Let's see. A book. You mentioned a book as your 5 necessities. Tell us a great book that you've read recently.
I would point towards, it wasn't recent, but everyone should read Brian Stevenson's Just Mercy. And I can give you 1,000 more when you're ready behind that one, but start there.
Thank you. And if you could walk the path with any person, they can be living now, they can be past, it could be a person in their future self, who would you like to walk the path with?
I mean, this might not be the answer you're looking for, but like my family, like I feel like radically blessed to be walking through life with my family. But if you want me to push outside that circle, who would I summon? Our friend David Ehrlich, who opened the Cafe Tumol Shel Shom in Jerusalem in 94, 95. He died at the beginning of COVID, not from COVID, but because he didn't want to go to the hospital because of COVID. Built the holiest sanctuary I know in Jerusalem, Tumol Shel Shom, and was a secular rabbi for that city who did some of the holiest work. I would bring him to my Shabbos table and sit at his table, even though he wasn't much of a Shabbos guy.
Thank you. And this is my last question.
Please.
What do you see ahead of you on the path?
I feel incredibly blessed beyond words to be doing what I'm doing, and I can't believe I get to do what I do. I think it is a potential model for other Jewish communities to think about crossing lines of race and class and religion and education in ways that we don't. In the immediate future, there was an awesome member of the kitchen family from Paris who returned to Paris after 3 years with us, and they did everything kitchen and everything glide, our trips to Alabama, serving meals and passing out needles. They returned to Jerusalem, to Paris, and missed out on glide and kitchen. And I've been teaching the progressive Jewish community in France for the past 6 months, once a month, give or take, about the work I used to do as a synagogue rabbi at kitchen and glide, and we're going there to teach them for a week. I think I love the Jews, right? I love thinking about putting down trauma, staying smart and strong and taking world-class care of ourselves, but beyond taking care of ourselves and being safe, how might we be radically righteous? How might we build righteous institutions that are going to far outlast us, that don't just remember a traumatic past, but that help us pull a periscope up and out and dream of promised lands and see us as shapers of those promised lands. That fuels me. And to open the doors of Glide wide, God willing, to help change people in the way that has changed me.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Lezak. I really appreciate you allowing us to walk on your path with you today. I'm just going to close off here with my farewell to the community, and if you will stick on with us and Rabbi Ain to say goodbye after we stop record, that would be great. Thank you so much again.
Thank you.
People on the Path is shared on the last Wednesday of each month. The March edition will be shared on Wednesday, March 30th. If you are watching and have someone wonderful in mind, like Rabbi Michael Lezak, that could be a potential guest, please email me and let me know. And thanks everyone for joining. I hope this conversation has been valuable and will support your efforts to find your footing and balance as you continue to navigate and blaze your path. One step at a time, I encourage you to walk your path with courage, wonder, curiosity, and an open mind, body, and spirit, like our wonderful guest today is walking his path. I wish everyone shalom and peace along the way. Nisiat Tova, safe travels, and I will see you next month.